Welcome to the hottest day of the year.
And we've decided to spend some of the time in the heat getting our toilet installed finally.
Finally, yeah.
We've got a Compoost toilet, which we received months ago. I've been going around looking for a place that does battery cables and stuff. Didn't find anybody that was on terrestrial land. Couldn't get to a marina, so we thought while we're on our way to Crick, we'll find a marina, pop in, and get some battery cables made up. Which ultimately led us to Midland Chandler's, where I got the appropriate battery cable and the appropriate lugs. So now we've got no excuses, except for it's incredibly hot. We've got that new fiberglass smell. Yeah, it's just flat on the bottom. And so one of the things that has slowed us down in installing this is we've got the tile floor that we laid, and we don't really want to drill any holes in the tile floor if we can avoid it. So the question has been, how are we going to fix it down? It's a permanent installation, so we don't want it to be, you know, like pick up and put down. So probably some silicone. Okay, well the electrical connection is really quite straightforward.
The electrical connection is what powers the stirrer.
Yes. Aha! Found you. Okay. Okay, well that's a smart design. Like, can't really see it in here, but there's two holes in the bottom, and then those two holes come through this raised baffle. So this is where it's like, if somehow your liquid overflows into here, it ends up down there. If it somehow got down there, it still would have to raise up above this point, like, you know, it'll have totaled the electronics, but it won't be going into the floor. So he's definitely done a lot to think through the way that the fluids can settle. Of course, the whole idea is you know, you use this thing to make sure that you don't cause the fluids to settle anywhere. This is your emergency alarm that says I'm overflowing. So yeah, and that's the one that is the one that needs a AAA battery or whatever it is.
Yeah, so this is a new item that Nigel and Lorraine sent us. So that hides the filter, and it also acts as a nice little shelf for anything, rather than just having the chrome filter, which is what we had before.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to have to leave enough room that we can get in and get that out, but we can do that. You know, it just sort of slides in.
Yeah, I think that's perfect.
So it's got our positioning pretty good.
So we've moved to the underside of the bed.
So that white one there is the cable that we're currently replacing, basically.
Yeah, so the old one basically operated the fan on the old toilet.
Yeah, well, and that switch operated the fan and the gas alarm.
Right.
And so we need to leave it running the gas alarm, but we're going to take our new cable, push it through there, replace that white one, and it's going to have to run along the wall up to these two guys, because it's got to go directly off the 12-volt breaker there.
Yeah.
So I made up the connection for the red cable, just have to do the black one. But yeah, it's really straightforward. I've got my trusty strippers here, and that just pops off. And then we take the ferrule out of here, which hopefully I am right about the size of those things. Get that slipped over there. But yeah, basically I've got these crimpers that I bought for the solar panels way back when, and they have a extra set of jaws that I was able to get in here that actually do a pretty good job of making a crimp connection, so everything's fine there. So yeah, that'll be battery terminal side, then we're just going to have to snake the other side through the wall and get it to where it'll be hooked up to the motor itself.
So we've got the wires pulled through, and then we just need to push through a little hole in the back, which is already kind of created.
Yeah, I can show it. Basically there's a rubber grommet there, and I'm just going to end up putting two holes in it that I can push the cables through.
So the cables have been pushed through the little grommet.
Okay, So made the connection. I'll have to get the heat shrink over and heat shrink it down and everything, but we've now made the connection to the battery at the back, turned it on, and the PC fan in there that does all the ventilation is running. Definitely feel air coming out here. We should now be able to run the motor, and that is what rotates the agitator on the bucket or the aerator on the bucket, and it just runs for a certain number of seconds. And then that's it.
So this is the base of the floor, the internal floor of the toilet, and this is what the bucket sits on, and it kind of covers up all the electrics and gubbins beneath it. It's
really just there to make it so that if anything ends up in here, it has a tendency to go over into there. So it's more of a splash guard than anything else, I think. But that's all it's doing. That gets us to a lid on the toilet. Now we just need to actually get it silicone down.
So before we fix the toilet in place, we thought we'd better just take a look at the filter system. So this is a carbon filter.
Yeah, which we've been using before. And then this would be the fly screen, which just basically is going to go in there. This guy is what this spigot will eventually run into. Okay, so that must be, this goes on there. This goes on here with a Jubilee clamp. Jubilee clamp drops down to this, which goes into that. Okay, that makes sense.
So the toilet is siliconed into place. So before we start using it, one thing we need to do is actually make the connection of the carbon filter.
We've cut the hose to length, reassembled everything so that the Jubilee clips, their screws are facing out just in case we ever need to service them again. These guys should last about a year to a year and a half, this size. So, you know, all we should really have to do in the future is kind of disconnect the entire thing, pop this off and put a new one on when it's ready to be replaced. Apparently you can also replace the medium inside these somehow, but they're riveted together, so I'm not sure how that works. Anyway, it's a fairly simple connection, basically inside here, and I really love this thing. Every time I have to do anything in here, I'm like, I'm so glad that exists. There's just a little bit of a gasket on there, and it's just a slip fit, and luckily the fan housing, it does have a little connector that you got to be a bit careful of, but essentially the fan housing is just there to grip onto, and it goes into place. Bleh. So we're at the point where the toilet is ready to be used, except for our nice cover here, which is a nice design. However, tolerances are tight in our bathroom to begin with, and I thought I left enough wiggle room. In fact, I know I left enough wiggle room until we actually siliconed everything in place, and then something must have shifted, not by much. I mean, it's really just skinning the gel coat, but that's enough to make it so that this wedges into place and isn't removable without great force.
So we're just going to assemble the toilet without the shelf, the vanity shelf thing.
Yeah, so our filter will be visible, which is fine. Essentially, there's a big socket here that meets, big nut here that meets with that socket down there. And this guy is to keep the whole bucket from spinning. So if I remember correctly, he said there was a trick to getting it into that socket. And then, there we go. And then...
So then, yeah, we've got the solids bucket, the liquids bottle. The liquids bottle has got a nice handle so you can just pull it out when you need to empty it.
There's this hinge here that isn't soft close like the toilet is, but it has that ratchet so it holds everything in place. So it just makes it so you crank it up and keep it in place.
So that you don't have to hold it up while you're taking the bucket or the bottle out.
Yeah, and then there's the vanity cover.
That you can close if you don't want to see what's down there. Just don't forget to open it.
Yeah.
There's an alarm, there's a liquids alarm, so you know when your liquids bottle is full. How does that work?
Oh, okay, so there's the emergency alarm down there, which is if there's conduction because liquid has filled into there, right?
So if there's been an overflow.
If I understand it correctly, there is somewhere in here, in this column at the front there, is some sort of, I think it's a light sensor, like an IR sensor or something, that basically just looks for a change in reflectance and says, I see liquid. Yeah, we need to put about 2 liters of Coir in there to start the whole business.
So this is the seat. So obviously you've got the separator for the solids and the liquids. And then on the understand side there's just this funnel that directs everything into the bottle.
Yeah.
So do you want to press the stirrer?
Okay, it does turn that way. Good enough.
So obviously we're not going to show you that when it's had a use.
Yes,
But
this is lacking use. There is no use in here.
But get the idea. One of the issues with our last toilet, we had the airhead, is that the stirrer went through the middle but didn't stir into the edges, whereas this stirs the whole of the bucket.
Yeah. I am very happy with the design. The installation was actually easier than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
It definitely looks considerably better than our previous waste device.
Notice we didn't include any pictures of our whole toilet in this video because it was not pretty.
No.
This toilet has changed our lives.
It has, yes. The compost has fixed so much in our boat. Our relationship is better. The smell of the boat is better. Everything about the boat has improved thanks to finally getting that thing installed.
We have been using our Compoost Toilet, I don't know how long for, because we've spent a month in Canada.
Once we actually did the installation, which was
easy.
It was relatively easy, barring one. In fact, it was very easy, barring one, two minor mistakes. One being that I chose a larger gauge wire than would actually fit into the connectors that were provided. Kind of had to, based on the distance and everything and the calculations off of 12-volt Planet. Then I over-spec'd more than I needed to over-spec. Once that was solved and I got an electrical connection good, the motor's nice and well supplied, there'll be no issues there. Glued the whole thing down, and at that point found out that we'd glued it in like 1/10 of a millimeter too close to the wall.
Amount.
Yeah. So
just for the cover, the filter cover. So you spoke to Nigel and he
basically ran me through, go outside, put on a mask, use a sander. It was basically, it's going up against a wall and there's a piece of trim on the wall that once the glue set and everything had kind of gotten into position, it had just shifted a tiny bit too close to the wall, which made it so that there was a point at which I was either going to be scraping off the molding on the wall or I was going to be scraping off the gel coat, right, that's what it's called, on the fiberglass. And the molding on the wall is permanent part of the wall, so I really don't want to lose that. The fiberglass is going to be always used in this position where it's not going to be visible anyway. So it was like, okay, let's just sacrifice the gel coat.
And it took seconds, like the tiniest bit that came off. The cover is so nice. Like on our previous toilet, we just had the filter there, and it just gathers dust and looks really ugly. So with this cover, it's just kind of fits in with any bathroom. It matches the toilet. It's clean. It acts as a shelf. And yeah.
And it also cuts out a little bit of the sound of the fan. Like it doesn't, I don't think it was designed to do that. It's just kind of an accident of the engineering, but it actually does kind of make it so that there isn't quite as much sound from the fan, although the sound is very low to begin with.
So the toilet itself looks like really, really nice. It looks so much nicer than the old one. It looks like a toilet that you'd have in your house. Like, it's, you know, that's the first thing. Like, it fits in our bathroom and doesn't look like an eyesore. And yeah, then using it as a consumer, like a user.
Well, it's a big step up from the Airhead. Like, it revolutionary step up from what we were using.
It's like a full-size seat.
It's a soft close seat, so when you let go, nothing goes bang.
The only thing I would say is that as a woman, you need to sit far forward for liquids and far back for solids. So you just have to get used to that, which...
Just have to get used to sort of sitting around?
Yeah, positioning yourself.
And as a man, I can say that it works just fine. It is more comfortable than the Airhead we had, which was the marine version, because the seat on that was like smaller front to back than a normal toilet seat. It was more round. So it feels more natural. But the diverter and this isn't a complaint, like once you get used to it, it works much better. But the diverter in the Airhead was, let's just say that there was no obstructions. There was nothing that would come into contact with anything that might be hanging down, for lack of a better way of putting it. So the first time that I decided to use this thing, I was like, okay, decided. I didn't actually decide. The first time after we'd done the installation, when you know, desperation kicked in, the initial response was, "Dear Lord, that's cold."
You sure you want to put this in?
It was a surprise.
So as a user, it is infinitely better. As a maintainer, it is infinitely better. Like, I cannot describe how much easier it is, how much quicker it is, how much cleaner it is. Like,
less touch points overall.
You lift the diverter bit and you're exposed to a bottle that you just lift out. There's no undoing of nuts and wrestling the bottle out. The pouring away of the bottle, it's actually a bottle, so the liquids are diverted down there. It's not got a flat thing that you have to shake about.
The only, in terms of having to deal with the liquids, issue that we ran into at all, well, there's sort of two issues. One is the flood alarm, the last ditch if something goes horribly wrong alarm, has a battery in it. The little battery that came with it definitely powered it up and definitely worked, but it was a week or two or a couple of weeks after we first installed the thing that all of a sudden I started hearing this chirping noise in the boat, and I thought there was like an animal or a cricket or something loose. It just chirps basically once a minute, and because it's inside the toilet, when it starts doing the chirping, it's so quiet that nothing cottoned on to me. I'm going back and forth through the boat going, where is that chirping noise coming from? Chirp. And then I'd move forward and I'd be like, is it there? It took me about half an hour to locate it and actually like pull the thing out and go like, oh, I just need to put in a new battery. Like, zero problem. Actually using it in terms of like you screw it down and you take it out and you unscrew it and you pour it into the L-sand sort of thing. Like, there isn't the glurging, there isn't the splashing, there isn't the inability to tell what the level is that we had with the old one.
Because the light sensor will tell us when it's full, and it'll do that when there's still a good inch or two.
Oh, even more than that. Like, it's the blue light goes on for us, and it's like, I'm not afraid of, I need to change this immediately.
Like if it's in the middle of the night, like, you don't have to do it.
Like right then, right there, which is the problem we had with the other one.
Lift the bottle out, put the cap on.
Yeah, and if the blue light glows on, you know, don't worry about cranking all the valves shut. Like, if you're sitting there at 2 o'clock in the morning and you've decided not to turn on the overhead light because you don't want to disturb your spouse with the clicking noises and the extra light coming from outside the bathroom door and everything, and, you know, suddenly the bathroom gets a little bit blue, you go, oh, okay. In the morning, I'll have to remember to pull this thing out. Not, good Lord, right now, I need to shut down entire bodily systems and try and figure out how to deal with something which will undoubtedly end up on my feet. This is, yeah, we quality of life is so much better.
So Michael's generally responsible for the liquids. I do it occasionally, but he does the liquids and I do the solids. And my life has got so much better because all I do is lift the bucket out, empty it into the, well, I use a secondary bucket that I then carry to our compost hot bin.
Don't know why she's pointing at me.
Well, it's out the window across the field, and then put a bit of coir in, and it's good to go. Like it takes minutes. Whereas with the airhead, well, we'd let it go a bit too long, which because it was such a palaver, because you had to remove the whole top half of the toilet and then lift the bottom half of the toilet up. So the toilet was completely removed from the bathroom when you did it. And it had these like bayonet fittings. So when you poured, inevitably bits of solid would get caught in the bayonet fittings. Yeah, you don't need to know.
Yeah. and their agitator thing would clog up and never quite reach the bottom.
So stuff would get stuck in the bottom that needed to be...
Yeah, the inconsistent mixing was its own nightmare.
This blue bucket isn't actually the base of the toilet, so it is replaceable if anything goes wrong with it or it, deteriorates. All of the material comes out. It's just...
And so far, the mixing mechanism has worked.
It leaves a tiny bit, like 5 mil in the corners all the way around.
Yeah.
Of dry material, but that's it.
Yeah, and that's so much better than what was happening with the previous model. So yeah, it's...
I used to dread doing the solids, and it used to take me, because there was so much cleaning and stuff involved, and it used to take half an hour.
And it discouraged you from doing it, so which is then where we end up...
Oh, I'll just go one more day. Whereas this, it's like, I'd do it every day and it would take me 5 minutes, if I had to. It just was easy. Because, you're supposed to put stuff in the hot compost, most days. So if I wanted to, I could just do that. And, thank you, Nigel and Lorraine. They're such lovely people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and they helped us out with all of the installation stuff. They took phone calls at odd times of the day to deal with things like me having to shave little bits of material off of their cover. Overall,
it's a brilliant design and we love it, and thank you very much for our new toilet.
Yeah.
And what is it you said?
Oh, yeah. So the sort of strange thing was, right, when we actually met Nigel and Lorraine for the first time at Crick last year, I didn't know this, but, it got sort of relayed to me that it was watching me complaining about the airhead back in the day
6 years ago
that kind of inspired this invention of this new toilet system and everything, and then has gone down and resulted in this. And I'm like, okay, that's a strange legacy to find out you have in the world. So yesterday I was thinking about it, and I'm like, if necessity is the mother of invention, well then the father of the invention is Nigel in this case, right? But maybe a complaining, whining American can be the uncle of invention, and that's kind of a neat place to be. So, I take no credit for it, but I just love the fact that everything I complained about, I don't have a complaint about anymore.